Downing Street has secured in principle an agreement with the Democratic Unionist Party, giving the Conservatives a working majority in Parliament. The deal would be on a confidence and supply basis, allowing Theresa May to pass crucial votes when the Commons resits next week. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister's two most senior advisers have resigned in the wake of the general election.
There were plenty of voices in the Conservative Party that reminded her that you can't run the government like you run the Home Office.
The London Bridge killers who used a van in their terror attack had wanted a 7.5-ton lorry instead. And Scotland push England all the way as they go on to draw their World Cup qualifier at Hampden Park. Good evening. Downing Street says it's secured the principles of an outline agreement with Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party, giving the Conservatives a working majority at Westminster. The deal would be on a so-called confidence and supply basis, allowing Theresa May to pass crucial votes once the Commons resits next week. The Cabinet will discuss the agreement on Monday. Today, Theresa May's two closest advisers, Nick Timothy and Fiona Hill, resigned following the Conservatives' failure to win a parliamentary majority in the election. Here's our political correspondent, Alex Forsyth.
Past friends, now even closer political allies. Without enough MPs of her own, Theresa May has turned to the Democratic Unionist Party to help her form a government. She signalled her intention yesterday, her way of keeping this address.
We will continue to work with our friends and allies in the Democratic Unionist Party in particular. Our two parties have enjoyed a strong relationship over many years, and this gives me the confidence to believe that we will be able to work together in the interests of the whole United Kingdom.
With its 10 seats won on Thursday, the DUP will back Theresa May on key votes like the budget. It's not a full coalition, but a looser agreement, the details scant so far. Now they're politically centre stage, prompting renewed scrutiny of their policies by some here in Westminster. Pro-Brexit, socially conservative, the party's opposition to same-sex marriage and abortion in Northern Ireland has caused concern among some Tory MPs here, but not all.
I don't think we're going to go backwards in terms of social legislation. I think it's part of our DNA now. It's part of what makes us the great country that we are, and I'm sure the DUP understand that.
Theresa May is relying on support from Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party in order to govern here. Because she doesn't have an overall majority, she'll have to balance competing demands on almost every front, taking into account not just the position of the DUP on some issues, but that of her own MPs too. And today, two of her closest advisers quit, leaving her to navigate tricky waters without their support. Nick Timothy and Fiona Hill were accused of having too much control over policy and tactics, blamed for the election campaign that cost the Prime Minister her majority. And today, as the consequences of that sunk in, reflection and recrimination. Some Tory MPs saying Theresa May had to heed calls to change.
There have been plenty of calls to make sure that the circle around her was wider and more inclusive, to prevent anyone believing that the two principal advisers had undue influence.
The Prime Minister's under pressure from all sides. With no majority, her plans for things like grammar schools and social care will be hard to get through Parliament. And the Queen's speech, her programme for government, is just over a week away.
I cannot see how a Queen's speech can be laden with interesting pieces of legislation, because many of them are going to be items which will cause dispute within the Conservative Party and certainly between the Conservative Party and the DUP.
The Prime Minister may be back in number 10, but not how she'd hoped. Without her key aides, dependent on support from the DUP. The job of governing here, harder than ever.
Alex Forsyth reporting there. So, what might the Democratic Unionists want in return for their loyalty? And how will any deal affect the politics of Northern Ireland? Here's John Campbell.
Political views here are firmly held and slow to change. On Saturday mornings for the last 5 years, unionist protesters have gathered at Belfast City Hall. They're opposing a council policy to reduce the numbers of days on which it flies the union flag, a decision they feel undermines their British identity. They welcome the DUP's new influence.
From a loyalist point of view, I think that we're in the Northern Ireland's in the best position we have ever been in. You know, we couldn't wish for anything better than a hung parliament.
So what should they be asking for?
First off, they should be asking to stop the witch hunt against the British Army.
Just across the street, what do people think the DUP should be prioritising?
I think the National Health for the Hospital is one of the most important ones.
Mostly of all schools and welfare and stuff like that. I'm pleased that they actually are going into government with them, to be honest.
A functioning executive and government for Northern Ireland, because that's what we really need. Money's great, but does it answer all the questions? No.
That we will organise massive demonstrations.
The DUP is a party with religious roots, and that continues to influence its social policy.
Storm it, hear us clear.
It opposes extending gay marriage and abortion rights to Northern Ireland.
I think fundamentally the DUP didn't expect to be in this position.
But issues like these are unlikely to feature in the ongoing relationship with the Conservatives.
The DUP's demands here are going to be overwhelmingly financial. They have a very clear roadmap which they set out 2 years ago in 2015 when they thought they would be in this position. There's very little in that about social policy.
But this new relationship raises wider questions about the Conservatives' role here. On Monday, cross-party talks are due to get underway, aimed at restoring Northern Ireland's collapsed government. But how can a Conservative Secretary of State act as an honest broker at those talks when the Conservatives are now so reliant on the DUP? This deal has come more quickly than many expected. But tonight the DUP are revealing nothing about what they want in return for their support. But on Brexit, the DUP does not appear to share Theresa May's view that walking away with no deal is a viable option. The party's financial demands are likely to include more money for infrastructure, and it will not support further austerity measures like the means testing of winter fuel allowance.
So, John, when do we expect to hear more on what the DUP would want in return for their loyalty to the Theresa May government?
Well, we're expecting a major DUP delegation to come to Westminster early next week, probably on Tuesday, so we may learn a little bit more then. And of course, it's in the Conservatives' interest to have this nailed down as far as possible before those Brexit negotiations begin. Also tonight, we've had a statement from Sinn Féin, the largest nationalist party in Northern Ireland. They have criticised this deal. They say in the past, when unionists have tried to prop up Tory governments, it hasn't achieved much. They think this will be a transitory arrangement and one which will end in tears. Interestingly, they've also said it's now time for the Irish government to speak up. They say it's up to the Irish government to now speak for the rights of all citizens of Northern Ireland.
OK, John, thank you for that. John Campbell there in Belfast. And Alex Forsyth is at Westminster now. Alex, good news for Theresa May on a DUP deal, but losing her trusted advisers, where does that leave her?
Well, Theresa May is exactly where she didn't want to be. She is facing pressure from all sides now. We don't know the details of that deal with the DUP, but she will have to give them some concessions in return for their support. And she's facing pressure from within her own party too. We know the Conservative Party members have different views on domestic policy, like social care, like grammar schools, things Theresa May wanted to do, but crucially on Brexit, where they are deeply divided about the direction the government should take. Theresa May needs all of them to back her now to get anything done. And we have seen today they are prepared to put pressure on her, all but demanding those two key trusted advisers departed, leaving Theresa May no doubt feeling isolated tonight. She has reappointed a new chief of staff. She's trying to make out that this is business as usual, but it is far from it. The election, the result, has left Theresa May's authority seriously weakened.
OK, Alex, thank you for that. Alex Forsyth there live at Westminster. Now, it's been revealed that the ringleader of the London terror attack had tried to hire a 7.5-ton lorry instead of a van to run down members of the public. Police say the number of injured would have been much higher. 8 people died in the knife and van attack a week ago. Here's our Home Affairs correspondent, Daniel Sanford.
On the edges of Borough Market, they were repairing the damage today, replacing the doors that had been shot off by armed police in the desperate hunt to find the killers. The police are gone, but the market itself, where 5 of the victims were stabbed to death, remains sealed off for now, a scene of horror and heroism.
We have stories of people who came out armed with chairs. Other items were throwing bottles and anything they could get their hands on with a view to trying to prevent the attackers either coming into pubs and bars, but more importantly to scare them off to try and stop other people being attacked.
The weapons the attackers used were 12-inch pink ceramic knives of the Ernesto brand, possibly bought at Lidl. They were found tied onto the men's hands with leather straps after they'd been shot by police. Minutes earlier, they'd killed 3 other people on London Bridge before crashing their B&Q van. In the van, police found 13 petrol bombs made with lighter fluid and cloth cut from tracksuit bottoms and 2 blowtorches. Detectives believe that behind this green door in East Ham was the men's safe house. In a top-floor bedsit rented by Rashid Redouan 2 months ago, detectives discovered items that had been used to make their petrol bombs and their fake suicide vests, and an English-language copy of the Quran left open at a page referencing martyrdom. The ringleader of the gang, Khurram Butt, had actually tried to hire a 7.5-ton truck that morning, which would have made the attack much worse, but fortunately his payment didn't go through. He was also being investigated by counter-terrorism detectives for fraud and was still on police bail, though the case was about to be dropped.
At the present time, I do not regard what I have seen as an intelligence failure, but everybody would expect us to look at what has happened and to ensure that both we learn whatever we can from what has happened, and secondly that we continue to improve and improve and improve, and that's what we've always done in this country in the face of a changing terrorist threat. The men killed 3 of their victims as they drove across London Bridge and stabbed 5 more to death in Borough Market. It was the 3rd attack on Britain in 10.5 weeks. Daniel Sanford, BBC News, East Ham.
People in London have been urged today to visit the capital's bars and restaurants in a show of unity and resilience exactly a week after the attacks. The British Red Cross launched the appeal calling for people to come together, as Sarah Campbell explains.
A warm June evening, a few minutes walk from London Bridge and Borough Market. This area is packed with bars and restaurants. That's what made it a target last Saturday. 1 week on, people are back in defiance of those determined to spread terror.
Obviously, still reflect upon it and think about those people that happened to, but it doesn't stop me from coming out at all, no.
Can't not think about what happened and was wondering about what the mood would be like, but it's really celebratory and fun.
We stick together, that's what we do, that's what London's all about.
Across the capital, there is a concerted effort this evening to collect money for victims of terror attacks and their families.
The UK Solidarity Fund was set up in the wake of the Manchester and Westminster attacks by the British Red Cross. So in pubs like this evening, they're encouraging people to donate money. Restaurants are donating the price of certain meals, and there are collections being held in tube stations and theatres.
And alongside the donations, a sense of solidarity.
I think it's absolutely right that on the anniversary of what happened last weekend, the tragic events that happened last weekend, that Londoners can just go out and do what Londoners do.
A walk across the centre of London this evening involving representatives from different faiths. A show of unity to remember those who were killed. Sarah Campbell, BBC News.
The luxury ocean liner Queen Mary 2 has been involved in a rescue operation to recover competitors in a yacht race hit by a massive mid-Atlantic storm. The lone sailor Mervyn Wheatley on board his yacht Tamarind had to issue a mayday, one of several vessels damaged in 15-metre waves and 60-knot winds. The competitors had set off from Plymouth at the end of May. The TV presenter Richard Hammond has escaped serious injury after being involved in a car crash in Switzerland. The electric car he was driving came off the road during practice for an organised race and then burst into flames. The 47-year-old suffered a fractured knee and was flown to hospital. Now, with all the sports news, here's Carthy and Anaya Seagram at the BBC Sports Centre. Hi there, Carthy.
Hi, Clive. Good evening. Phenomenal and crazy were 2 of the words used by Scotland and England's teams to describe their qualifying game for the 2018 World Cup. It ended in a 2-2 draw, but the drama was provided by the 3 goals scored in the final 6 minutes. David Ornstein reports.
Come on, Scotland!
A rivalry dating back to 1872, each encounter laced with anticipation. Security was increased following recent terror attacks, and before kick-off, a minute's silence in memory of the victims. This was a match Scotland had to win, something they'd not done at home to England in 32 years, and which looked unlikely as the visitors applied the pressure. That pressure told after half-time when Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain came off the bench to make an immediate impact. Scotland were bruised but not beaten, and when Lee Griffiths equalised in the closing stages, they were invigorated. The drama, though, was far from over. 3 minutes later, unbelievably, and in almost identical fashion, Griffiths did it again to send his team and their fans into dreamland. But with 3 priceless points almost within their grasp, the celebrations came to an abrupt end as Harry Kane, England's captain for the day, had the final say, and Scottish joy turned into despair. So England strike late to break Scotland hearts and deny them what would have been an incredible victory. It's another blow to their hopes of qualifying for next summer's World Cup, a tournament England remain firmly on course to reach. David Ornstein, BBC News, Hampden Park.
There was also a late goal as Northern Ireland beat Azerbaijan in their qualifier for the World Cup. Stuart Dallas's injury time winner boosts Northern Ireland's chances of reaching the tournament in Russia. Scotland and England's rugby union sides both won their international matches against Italy and Argentina, respectively, while the British and Irish Lions beat the Crusaders in the latest match of their tour of New Zealand. Owen Farrell scored all of the Lions' points. They won 12-3. England's cricketers have beaten Australia in their final ICC Champions Trophy group game. A brilliant century from an unbeaten Ben Stokes saw England win by 40 runs when chasing an adjusted target due to several rain delays. That knocks the Australians out. England had already qualified for the semi-finals. It was a day of firsts at the French Open. Jelena Ostapenko, who had previously never won a match at Roland Garros, is now the new singles champion. Ostapenko, who has only just turned 20, became the first unseeded woman since 1933 to win the title in Paris, and she did it by coming back from a set down against the third seed, Simona Halep. And there was a first Grand Slam title for Great Britain's Alfie Hewitt in the wheelchair singles. Hewitt beat the defending champion Gustavo Fernandez in 3 sets. That's all the sport, Clive.
Carthy, thank you for that. And that's it from me and the rest of the team. Have a very good night.